back to Right. I'm Lucia, and today we're going to be talking about the basics of a story and the elements of a novel. So, the most basic part of a story, whether you're writing a novel or a short story, are the elements of a narrative. There are 6 parts to this, which are plot, setting, characters, conflict, theme, and point of view. I'll be covering each of these in this video. Let's get to writing. That's what I say, right? Let's get right to it. There we go. To start off, we'll be talking about plot. So what is plot, you may ask? Here is a basic setup for a plot map, and although it might seem complicated, just know that plot makes up the events that occur in a story. This can include going to a grocery store or taking a vacation. Plot is broken down into 5 smaller parts which form a plot map. These are the exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, and resolution. In the exposition, the characters, setting, and main conflict, which is the problem that the characters in the story must face, are introduced. The rising action are the events that build up suspense and set the story in motion. They lead up to the climax, which is the point in the story in which the story takes a major turn. For example, the climax of a story about a person trying to become a great runner might be when that person gets lost while running. The next part of the plot is the falling action, which are the events that lead to the end of the story. In our runner story, that would be the protagonist finding his way back to the path and completing the race. The final part of the plot is the resolution, and this is how the conflict is resolved at the end of the story. For the runner, that would be him winning the race. Some stories have a denouement, which is a section of the story following the resolution in which all loose plot points are resolved. All of these plot points are present in a well-developed story and will be present in the stories that you will be writing. Next off is setting. The setting is where the story is set, and this includes the location, the time, and the mood. The location would be a geographic place where the story takes place. In a story about a student who loves to read, the setting would likely be a library. The time would be the date when the story takes place or the general era, such as the Victorian era or the early 1900s for certain stories. The mood is the feeling or the vibe of a place in the story. If the story is set in a haunted house, for example, the mood would be creepy or suspenseful. Now for characters and conflict. Characters are the people in your story. In any story, there are main characters, supporting characters, and then characters that only appear once or twice. As explained earlier, the conflict of your story is the problem that your characters must face. There are several types of conflict. Theme is another important part of your story. The theme is the message you want to get across to your reader, and these are usually about life or human nature. The runner story, for example, might have a theme which is to never give up. All good stories have themes, so that is something to keep in mind while writing a novel. Last but not least, the point of view. This is who's telling your story. There are 3 main point of views for writing: first, second, and third. First person usually uses pronouns such as I, me, my, and our. This story is written in the perspective of one of the characters in the story. Second person uses you, yours, yourself, and etc. Second person is rarely used for novels and is more common for things such as instruction manuals or cookbooks. Finally, third person uses pronouns such as he, his, she, and hers. Third person is written in the perspective of an outside narrator, like a person watching in on the action without being a part of it. There are 3 kinds of third person writing. In a third person objective story, the reader only knows what can be seen and not the thoughts of characters. For example, the girl read the book. In a third person limited story, the reader knows the thoughts of one character. In a third-person omniscient story, the reader knows the thoughts of all the characters. In an omniscient story, the scenes are usually told from more than one perspective. These stories will start chapters with different character names, and that is how you can identify them. And that's it. Those are the basics of story writing. We hope you learned them all because we will be referring to them in our future videos. Thanks for watching and see you next week for inspiration in the different genres.